So for those of you that already saved your body portrait environments in a Google Doc, normally you would be able to copy this and in Photoshop, because my portrait of New York City is landscape. Normally, if this was from like a Google search, you would be able to create a new document, and I would do 11 by 8.5 for my orientation because it's a landscape and it's not a portrait. And I'm going to do my body portrait. This is going to be my second one. So I'm going to hit create. And normally you would be able to go to edit and paste, but notice how my paste isn't an option. So you have to go through another step if you are in a Google Doc. So from here, you are going to copy this image, and then you are going to have to open up Word 2003. Okay, and I'm just going to do a blank document, a blank Word document. Now you might have some other things that come up, like to set up a Word, to set up your profile for Word. You can just click through those and accept and all those things. I use Word quite a bit because I have a lot of students that share Google Docs with me, and I have to resize them, especially for painting class. So I utilize Word a lot. So just click through those prompts to get you guys to have, a Word document. And then I'm going to right click and paste. And then from Word, I'm going to right click and copy. And then I'm going to open up Photoshop and I'm going to go to edit and paste. And look at there, it works. So if you're in a Word document, you have to copy, paste, or I'm sorry, if you're in a Google Doc, you have to copy, paste in a Word doc, copy, paste into Photoshop. So it's an extra step. I'm not quite sure why that is. It's super annoying, and I totally understand that. That's the only way that I know around it. So I can Control T and I can resize this. Now I have a little bit of white showing here. So I'm going to make this bigger, and I'm going to crop some of it so that none of that white is showing. So I'm just going to go like that. Like so. So this is going to be my image for my body portrait number 2. So for body portrait number 2, if I go to the assignment here, it says your body at least twice in the foreground. So the foreground is the front of a scene. Like you're pretty like much up close, front and center. And then in the foreground behind something, or I'm sorry, and then in the background behind something. So I'm going to be in the foreground, and then I'm going to be in the background. Here's the kicker. You have to be behind something. Now, you can't be totally behind something, or that defeats the whole purpose. I can't really grade that. But you're going to be hidden behind something slightly. Okay? So for this particular scene in New York City, I'm going to put myself standing or walking in this crosswalk. And then maybe I'm also going to put myself like back here behind this van. Or maybe I'll put myself over here kind of behind this person. Okay, so I've got my body in here. It's a landscape. I'm going to go to File and Open. And I'm going to hit the back arrow until I get back to the Common Folders, PWHS, FireEisen Computer Graphics, 2020 Fall. And you should be able to find your portrait in here. If you do not have this view, you can change it. Normally, you guys are in the list mode. Just change it to large icons. You can change the view of it. Now I'm going to go back like I did last time, and I'm going to pick a different student because sometimes it makes people feel weird if I do someone in the class. So I'm just going to go through and try to find a different person that I can put in this scene. This should work. Okay. So I'm going to have to lasso, pretend this is me, and I'm going to have to put myself in this scene. So I'm going to go and use my quick selection. You guys have done this already. The reason I have you do this again is to give you more practice. The more you do this, the better you are going to get at it. This isn't going to take me very long because I've had a lot of practice doing this. So there's some areas that I can tell need to be touched up. So this hand, I'm missing part of the fingers. So I can zoom in with my magnifying glass and I can just scrub up against those to add those in. To subtract, what key do I hold down? Alt, yep. Hold Alt and your plus sign changes to a minus sign. Now, you can use the eraser after you move yourself in, but I find that if I do some of this cleanup work before, it just saves me a little bit of time in the end. So naturally, it's a plus sign. Alt changes to a minus sign where you can subtract. Notice how I'm very carefully going around. I'm very controlled with my mouse, very carefully adding and subtracting. The shoes are usually the place that people have the most problems with. So take a few extra seconds and just kind of clean up that shoe area. Okay, so I am selected. I can go to my move tool. I have a little scissors here. I am going to snip myself out of the hallway. I am going to hover and drop myself into this scene. Now, don't panic because you're huge in here. This is good because then you can use your eraser. Remember to bump the hardness down on your eraser. You don't want, let me show you. You don't want, whoops. Oh, I'm trying to use the clone stamp. That's not even an eraser. What the heck am I doing? You don't want a sharp eraser, okay? You don't want your eraser to look like that. You want your eraser to look like this, a soft eraser. So I bumped down my hardness. I'm going to do maybe like 50 or so percent. And I'm just going to kind of scrub. And I can make my eraser smaller. It's pretty large right now. It doesn't need to be that big. But I will say I don't like a little tiny wimpy eraser. I like a decent sized eraser. It just makes my lines look a little bit cleaner. Okay, so everything there looks good. If I hold down the space bar, whoops, or I can move up so that I can see the arms look good. I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleanup work, maybe in the shoes. So I'm going to go back to my eraser tool and I'm just going to smudge the edges of those shoes just to clean them up a little bit more. So I'm just scrubbing up the edges after I've moved myself into this scene. And then after I get all the edges looking pretty nice, then I can hit Control T, which is short for transform, and I can resize myself. Okay, so if I'm standing in this scene, I'm gonna have to figure out, am I like where this girl is in the black hat? Because then I'm gonna have to make myself, you know, the right height, or am I kind of in the back here by this guy with his phone and his earbuds? And I have to figure out, like, am I shorter than these people? You know, these legs look pretty long. I'm probably shorter than them. I might also want to switch the way I'm looking. So right now I'm looking to the left, but maybe I want to be looking to the right. I can go to Edit, Transform, and I can flip horizontally. And look at that. I can be facing the opposite direction if I want to be. So you can change that by Edit, Transform, and flip horizontally. Now, I'm not done with Body Portrait 2 because I'm only in there once. The project says that I need to be in there twice, once in the foreground, behind something, and in the background. So here I am. I'm only in here once. So I need to duplicate myself. There's a few ways you could duplicate yourself. You can right-click on that layer, and you can duplicate layer. Another way is if you're using the Move tool, you can hold Alt, and it changes to a double arrow, and you can click and you can drag, and there's two of you. And then the third way to duplicate is by clicking on your layer and dragging it and dropping it into the new layer button next to the garbage can in the bottom of the layer palette. It doesn't matter which one you use, but here I am twice. Now I have to be behind something. So maybe I want to be like standing behind one of these people. Or maybe I want to be more in the street standing behind one of these cars. I get to decide how I want to do that. So I think I might actually make this one, make me pretty big, like in the foreground, like I might be possibly walking in this crosswalk. And then this one over here, this one, I think I'm going to make it look like I'm behind this guy by making myself a little bit smaller. And maybe I'll flip it. I'm going to flip it back, edit, transform, flip horizontally, so that it looks like I'm standing behind this guy. So maybe I want to be like behind his backpack and his leg a little bit. So the first thing is I need to make myself smaller so that I look like I'm behind him, but not too small. That's a little too small. So maybe like that. And then what I like to do is I like to just lower my opacity temporarily so that I can see where I need to erase. So this one's going to be a little bit tricky because this guy is pretty, his clothing and everything is pretty dark. And that background is pretty dark. So I'm going to have to kind of figure out where I need to erase. So I'm just temporarily lowering my opacity so that I can see where I need to use my eraser tool. So I'm going to go to my eraser and I'm going to start erasing any part of me that needs to be behind this guy to look like I am behind him. So I'm erasing where his backpack is, right? Because that would be behind, I would be behind that backpack. So I'm going to be almost like peeking out behind his backpack here. Okay, I'm going to have to erase part of his shorts and his shirt here. I'm going to have to come down to his leg and erase myself from behind that. So it looks like I'm behind his leg, not in front of it. Okay, so there's that. And then if I up my opacity again, okay, that looks pretty good. I got a little bit crazy with the eraser here by the backpack. So you can see part of the van is showing through. So I might have to control see this a little bit until I get back to get that part back. So sometimes it takes a few tries to get this correct. So I just have to be careful not to over erase too much. So I'm creating an illusion that I'm behind this backpack. I'm not really, because it's a picture taken after the fact. So using the eraser to make this happen. All right, that looks a little bit better. And now I can bump my opacity all the way back up. And I am behind this guy. A few things that I need to work on. A shadow. It's a little bit bright here. So I might want to use my burn tool and apply a shadow underneath the feet. Now, I said this last time. White, the color white does not burn. So I'm going to have to make a new layer and I'm going to have to use my brush tool, a brush tool to make my shadow. So I'm just going to use a gray and I'm going to lower my opacity so that it's a soft brush tool. And I can start adding in a little bit of shading. Now this is going to happen underneath the feet because I'm in the layer underneath the feet here. And I'm just going to kind of brush to make it look like a shadow underneath the feet. This person standing in the foreground, I don't really need a shadow because look, you can't see her feet. It's out of the view. So I don't need to do a shadow there. So technically, this looks pretty decent. The last thing I want to show you guys is image adjustments. So by clicking on my layer 2 copy, this person in the foreground, I can go to image adjustments and I can go to any of these adjustments, especially at the top. So brightness contrast, I'm just going to click on it and show you what it does. So you can overly brighten yourself, okay, or you can up your contrast or lower it. So a lot of the lighting in the scene, you're going to have to change and mess with the brightness contrast. What I'm looking at is what the people in the scene look like and what I look like. Do I blend in or do I look like I don't belong? So I'm just darkening upping that contrast a little bit more. Image adjustments, brightness, contrast. So lowering my brightness just because this scene is kind of like a little bit dimmer, a little bit darker than the hallway was. I can go to image adjustments, exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation, color balance. For me, I don't really need to change the color, but let's say you're in a scene that gives off like a lot of red light. That one you might have to go into color balance and kind of play with your reds and your magentas and your yellows. You can change it to shadows, midtones, highlights. So like I could make myself a little bit more red. Okay, this scene doesn't call for that, but if you have a scene that you do need to change the coloring, you can do all of that in image adjustments. Okay, for me, this is all I need for body portrait 2. You can add filters to this one if you want, but it's not required. I'll leave that up to you guys. But for me, I can go to File and Save As. Body Portrait 2. Remember, it's going to try to save in the common folder. Look at that. It's trying to save in the common folder. That's not going to work. So you need to hit the up arrow until it turns light gray. And then you're going to scroll down and find My Folder. The reason it tries to save in the common folder is because that's where I opened up my image. So that's where I opened up the picture of me, and it tries to save in there. Students aren't allowed to save in the common folder. This is what happens. I had a couple kids that saved in there. So I'll show you what happens when you save in the common folder as a student. This. So you click on it, and there's nothing there. It wants me to open a new document. Okay, so Kyler Brom isn't going to work. Right here, Yakub, same thing. Doesn't open his project because he tried saving in the common folder. I can tell it was these students because look, the numbers are the same, 0893, 0911. So do not save in the common folder. I can't open it. You can't open it. Nobody can open it. So make sure you guys take 2 seconds and you save in My Folder instead of the common folder.